Now let's add the feet and a sort of shade above the cockpit. So just to add a little bit more detail, let's finish out the feet, and we're just going to do some simple sort of old school transformer kind of feet. So we'll kind of bring in a cube here, and let's give ourselves a little bit more size, and we'll kind of rotate it into position. And let's kind of pull this forward and kind of rotate it so it's angled through this opening. Let's make it a little bit shorter. Let's give ourselves some subdivisions, and let's actually just do the depth in this case. Bring that out a little bit more. All right. I'll pull this forward a bit, so something like that. So we want it to come kind of right into the middle of the foot. Now let's add some shape to it. So I'm going to take the front part of this and kind of scale it down a little bit. Same thing here, maybe not quite that much. And then let's take this down so we've got a little bit more of a foot sort of shape, but we still want it to be kind of mechanical. I'll pull that up a little bit. Let's make it a little bit more narrow. Now let's start to add some edge loops, kind of sharpen up the shape of it. Kind of on the side as well. Smooth this out. And we can get something like that. I'll pull it down a bit. And then let's take just the top part of it. So by grabbing those points, let's pull that up into the foot a little bit more. All right, now once we have one of these, we can duplicate this, move it to the back, rotate it around about 180 degrees. And it's actually off a little bit because we rotated the other one. So it won't be exactly. Mine's about 190. Make it a little bit shorter. Connect it up at the back. And just something like that. You can make it, if you want to make it a little bit shorter, like that. You can do that, or you could just have the front if you wanted to. Now for the sort of a piece, kind of a protective piece over above the top, and I want it to be kind of a section of a sphere. So let's bring in a polygon sphere, and I'm just going to scale it up quite a bit. I'm also going to scale it down in the Y. So we just want sort of one little section. I'm also going to change the subdivisions to 24 going around. So something like that. We can come to the side and kind of see roughly the right section. I think that's actually probably pretty close there. So now I just need to get rid of part of this. And so let's come to the front, and I'll just delete everything on the bottom. Come to the top, delete everything behind that axis. Just like that. And I want to keep basically 3 sections from the center. So all of this, I'll just click it, shift double click, and then I can come in and let's actually get rid of all these in the center. Now I can just double click on this and delete it. Let's do the same thing over here. So now we're just left with this particular section, and we can kind of put it into position, and we can see that we don't really need all of those. So let me grab those, delete them. That gives us something more like that. Now I want to connect it up with this sort of piece up here. And so let's kind of pull this out a little. And then I'll take those edges and let's extrude those edges. I'm going to change the axis to a world axis and just push them straight back in the Z, and then I'll kind of scale them out a little bit. Let's take these points and scale those out just so it's kind of straightened out a little. Now let's give ourselves a little bit of thickness. So just take the whole thing, do an extrude, and we'll push those polygons down a little bit. Oh. Let's go ahead and freeze our transformations here. Extrude this down a little bit. So I don't want to make it too thick. Oh, you can see I did it again. I need to go in and extrude the faces. There we go. All right, now if we want to add a little bit of detail up here, we can take all these faces and extrude those out. Okay, and maybe come in across here and do the same thing. And then we can start to use our insert edge loop tool to kind of tighten up some of these lines in anticipation of smoothing. Kind of come in here and tighten up these edges back here. And let's kind of come around the sides as well. So now when we smooth it, we should get something that has a little bit more detail to it. Okay, and we've got these that are, we can kind of push right up against the side here. Oops, select all those. Can push right up against the side of it. Okay, just make sure that's centered. And then we can move our pivot point for that. Again, using insert, kind of right up here. And then that will allow us to kind of rotate this up. So we can get something like that. All right. So once we've got the shade built, the next thing we want to do is kind of clean everything up and talk about naming and setting up our hierarchy. So we'll do that before moving on to materials and texturing.